I was halfway through tying my hair into a low bun when I heard her voice. Mommy, don't drive today. It wasn't the sleepy mumble of a 6-year-old trying to skip school. It was sharp, deliberate, like she'd rehearsed it. I turned, brush still in hand, and saw Lily standing by the doorway, her teddy clutched tight to her chest, eyes wide and glistening. Sweetheart, what are you talking about? I asked, soft but amused. The morning sunlight spilled through the blinds, striping the kitchen tiles in gold. My coffee sat untouched, steam fading, while my phone buzzed beside it. 3 missed calls from work already. She just shook her head, curls bouncing. Please, Mom, don't drive today. I sighed, kneeling so we were eye level. Is this about the thunderstorm yesterday? You know Mommy's car is safe. I smiled, brushing her cheek, feeling the coolness of her skin. But she didn't smile back. Her voice dropped to a whisper. It's not the weather. Something in her tone made my stomach tighten. I looked past her to the window. My silver SUV parked neatly in the driveway, sunlight glinting off its hood. Everything looked normal. Still, that uneasy tingle crept up my spine. Lily wasn't dramatic by nature. She was observant, like her father used to be, before everything fell apart. I stood slowly, forcing a steady breath, and grabbed my keys. Okay, tell you what, I said, keeping my voice light. I'll check the car first, just to make you feel better. She nodded once. And for reasons I couldn't quite explain, my heart began to race. The smell of gasoline always took me back. Not to open roads or family trips, but to that one summer evening in 2016 when everything I'd built started to unravel. I was 29, married, and living in a 2-story house in Charlotte, North Carolina. Back then, I believed that love could fix anything. I believed in Daniel, his steady hands, his promises, his charming smile that could disarm anyone. What I didn't realize was that charm can be a kind of weapon. The first time he raised his voice at me, it was over something small, a late bill. The first time he broke something, it was my phone. The first time he scared me, it was himself in the mirror afterward, apologizing with tears in his eyes. I'm sorry, Claire, he'd said. You just push me too far sometimes. I wanted to believe it was my fault, because that meant I could fix it. Then came Lily, and everything changed for a while. Daniel adored her. He was attentive, gentle, even loving. But the calm never lasted. The night he threw a glass against the wall, shattering it inches from her crib, something inside me broke too. The next morning, I packed a single suitcase. My hands shook as I folded Lily's baby clothes, her pink blanket, her stuffed bear. I could still hear my mother's voice in my head, her last piece of advice before she passed away. A woman's instinct is never wrong, Claire. The moment you feel unsafe, don't wait for proof. Just go. That morning, I finally understood her. As I backed out of that driveway with Lily crying softly in the back seat, Daniel stood on the porch, shouting things I can't forget. Promises. Threats. Lies. I didn't look back. It took months to start over. Cheap apartments, odd jobs, nights filled with worry and quiet triumphs. But each day I woke up beside my daughter, I told myself, never again. And so I built walls, emotional ones, legal ones, even physical ones. Changed my number. Changed my name on some papers. Still, sometimes at night, I swore I could smell gasoline, faint and haunting, like a ghost reminding me that the past isn't always done with you. Starting over wasn't cinematic like the movies made it seem. It wasn't brave music and golden light. It was microwaved dinners, unpaid bills, and the constant hum of anxiety in my chest. The first year after leaving Daniel, I lived in a 1-bedroom apartment above a laundromat in Raleigh. The air always smelled faintly of detergent and metal. Lily's crib was wedged between the window and my desk, a second-hand IKEA piece I'd found on Craigslist. Every night, after she fell asleep, I'd sit at that desk with a cup of instant coffee and stare at my laptop screen, eyes aching, trying to finish online classes in business management. I had always been the wife of Daniel Hayes, the real estate guy. Now I was just Claire, the single mom who showed up late to daycare because her boss made her stay to finish invoices. Still, There was something quietly empowering about survival, about learning to rely on no one but yourself. During that time, I met Margaret Lane, the owner of a small home staging company. She was in her 50s, fierce, sarcastic, and sharp-eyed, the kind of woman who could spot fake confidence from across the room. She hired me as her assistant after I practically begged her for an interview. "You're persistent," she'd said, eyeing my resume. "I like that. But you'll have to earn your place here, sweetheart." And I did. I learned everything. How to design, budget, negotiate, sell. I worked weekends, early mornings, holidays. My fingers blistered from lifting furniture, my heart bruised from pretending I wasn't exhausted. But slowly, the wins began to come. The first check that covered rent and groceries. The first compliment from a client. The first moment I saw my name, Claire Hayes, printed on a business card. Each little victory stitched a new layer of confidence over the old wounds. Margaret became more than a boss. She became a mentor, a friend. She taught me that power didn't always roar. Sometimes it whispered through persistence. "Never underestimate a quiet woman," she told me once. "People assume silence means weakness. Let them. Then surprise them." By 2022, I had saved enough to buy a modest house. The silver SUV parked in front was my first new car. Lily started first grade. Her laughter filled the rooms, chasing away echoes of the past. On social media, I kept things simple. A photo of a latte here, a sunset there. Nothing to hint at success. I didn't post about my promotions or the small business I quietly started with Margaret's support, Luna Interiors. Part of me was proud. The other part still looked over my shoulder every time a car followed too closely. Freedom, I'd learned, came with a price, vigilance. And sometimes, when the air was still and the house quiet, I'd get that same faint smell again, gasoline, or maybe just memory. Either way, I'd always check twice before locking the doors at night. The morning sunlight was deceptively peaceful, pooling across the driveway as if nothing bad could possibly happen under skies that blue. Lily stood by the porch railing, her small fingers curled around the wood, watching me as I approached the car. I tried to keep my voice calm. "See, honey? Nothing scary here. Mommy's just gonna check, okay?" She nodded slowly, but her expression stayed tight, her lower lip trembling. "Check the vents, Mommy." Something about the way she said it, so sure, so certain, made me pause. I opened the driver's door. The familiar scent of leather and faint air freshener greeted me. My purse sat where I'd left it. Everything looked normal. I crouched down, leaning toward the vents. That's when I saw it. At first, it looked like dust, a thin gray film clinging to the inside slats. But when I brushed it with my fingertip, it crumbled into something fine and powdery. And then the smell hit me, sharp, chemical, wrong. My pulse stuttered. I pulled back fast, heart slamming against my ribs. I glanced under the seat, then at the passenger side. The same powdery residue clung to the vents there too. For a moment, the world went eerily still. Then my instinct screamed. I grabbed my phone, snapped photos, and called the police. My voice shook despite every effort to steady it. "This is Claire Hayes," I said. "I think someone tampered with my car." Within 15 minutes, 2 patrol cars arrived. The officers were professional but cautious, their expressions tightening as they examined the vents. One of them, Officer Grant, looked up at me. "Ma'am, you did the right thing not starting the car." He wouldn't tell me much, just that a forensic team would handle it from here. But I saw it in his eyes. Whatever was in those vents wasn't harmless. I took Lily inside, hands trembling as I poured her some cereal she didn't touch. My mind raced through possibilities, vandals, neighborhood kids, random prank. But deep down, I knew better. When my phone rang that afternoon, I almost didn't answer. The number was blocked. "Claire." The voice said, low, familiar, steady. My breath froze. "Daniel." "It's been a long time," he said. "I saw the pictures of your fancy new office. Looks like life's treating you well." I swallowed hard, trying to keep my voice even. "What do you want?" He chuckled softly. "Just checking in. You always did like your car spotless. Thought I'd help with that." The line went dead. I stared at the phone. pulse pounding in my ears. He knew. He'd found me. For years, I'd hidden everything, changed addresses, stayed off the radar. But one business feature in a local magazine, one photo outside my company building, and suddenly the past had clawed its way back. I called Margaret. The moment she heard my voice, she said, "Tell me where you are." By evening, she was at my house, her silver hair pulled into a severe bun, eyes blazing. "Let the police handle him," she said. "You don't have to do this alone anymore." For the first time in a long time, I believed her. When Officer Grant returned later that night, his expression was grim. "There was residue of a toxic compound," he said carefully. "If you'd started the car with the windows closed, it could have been serious." I felt my knees go weak. Lily, sitting on the couch with her teddy, looked up at me with solemn eyes. "See, Mommy," she whispered. "I told you not to drive." Tears welled in my eyes. I crouched down and hugged her tight, inhaling the sweet scent of her shampoo, trembling with gratitude and horror all at once. And beneath that fear, something shifted. The same steel I'd forged over years of survival began to surface again, stronger, calmer, colder. I wasn't the woman who ran anymore. 2 days later, I found myself sitting across from Daniel in a small conference room at the Raleigh Police Department. The room was cold, all metal chairs, humming fluorescent lights, and that faint disinfectant scent that clings to government buildings. He looked older, leaner. The arrogance was still there, though, coiled beneath his calm smile. The same smile he used when he thought he was still in control. "Claire," he said, his voice too casual. "You look good. I heard you've done pretty well for yourself." I folded my hands on the table. "Save it, Daniel." The officer standing by the door cleared his throat, reminding him that every word was being recorded. But Daniel just chuckled. "You always had a flair for drama. Calling the cops over a little dust in your vents? That's paranoid, even for you." I met his gaze and smiled. The kind of slow, deliberate smile that unnerved him once. "Funny. The lab called it a toxic compound capable of causing unconsciousness within minutes. I guess we have different definitions of dust." For a heartbeat, his mask slipped. His jaw clenched. Then the officer stepped forward. "We have enough evidence for a restraining order and attempted harm investigation. You'll be contacted by your lawyer," he said firmly. Daniel didn't respond. He just stared at me, the kind of stare that used to make me shrink. But not anymore. When the officers escorted him out, I exhaled for the first time in hours. My reflection in the one-way mirror looked unfamiliar. Older, stronger, unflinching. Later that night, Margaret came over again. We sat on the porch, the air cool and clean after a light rain. Lily slept upstairs, her teddy tucked under her arm. "You could press charges," Margaret said quietly. "You'd win." I nodded slowly. "I know. But," she prodded. I looked out toward the darkened driveway, the SUV now sealed with police tape. "I don't want him in my head anymore. I want peace, not court dates." She studied me for a long moment, then nodded. "Then you set your conditions." And I did. I filed for a permanent restraining order. I hired a private security consultant for my home. I arranged for an anonymous donation to a local women's shelter in memory of my mother, and another to fund legal aid for domestic abuse survivors. And most importantly, I decided that Daniel's chapter in my life was officially over. No more fear. No more checking shadows. My conditions weren't for him. They were for me. To reclaim the parts of myself he tried to erase, the parts that now stood taller, calmer, wiser. That night, I sat by Lily's bed and watched her sleep. She looked peaceful, her face soft under the glow of her nightlight. When she stirred, she whispered, half dreaming, "Did the bad man go away?" I brushed a curl from her forehead. "Yes, baby," I whispered. "He can't hurt us anymore." But in my heart, I added another truth. He never will again. 3 weeks later, the world had softened again. The police had closed their initial investigation, the restraining order was approved, and Daniel's number was permanently blocked from every possible channel. I didn't need to see him in a courtroom. The silence was enough of a sentence. Life was beginning to breathe again. Each morning, I'd pour coffee into my favorite ceramic mug, the one Lily painted at school with uneven pink hearts, and stand by the kitchen window watching the sun rise over the oak trees. My silver SUV sat quietly in the driveway, newly cleaned and restored, but I hadn't driven it yet. Not until today. "Mom," Lily said, skipping into the kitchen, her curls bouncing. "Can we go to Grandma's garden today?" Her grandmother had passed years ago, but Lily still called the flower nursery we often visited Grandma's garden. It was where I used to take her when I needed calm. Rows of wild lavender, the hum of bees, the scent of life and renewal. I hesitated for only a second before smiling. "Yes, sweetheart. I think it's time." Before we left, I opened the glove compartment. Inside, tucked beneath the registration papers, was a small folded note, my mother's handwriting, worn and fading at the edges. "A woman's instinct is her compass, Claire. It won't always make sense, but it will always be right." I hadn't seen it in years. Somehow, finding it now felt like closure. When I slid into the driver's seat, I inhaled deeply. The air smelled clean, new filters, new beginnings. I turned the key. The engine purred to life, steady and strong. Lily clapped softly from the back seat. "See, Mommy? It's safe now." "Yes, baby," I said, smiling through the ache in my chest. "It is." As we drove, sunlight poured through the windshield, warm on my hands. I felt lighter, freer, like every mile between me and the past was a piece of my soul returning home. At a stoplight, I glanced at Lily through the mirror. She was humming softly to herself, tracing patterns on the fogged window. For the first time in years, I wasn't afraid of what might be waiting around the corner. Because now I knew, instincts aren't paranoia, they're protection. And sometimes, the smallest voice carries the loudest truth. That day, my daughter saved my life, but what I really learned was this: sometimes, the voice that warns you is the one that teaches you how to live. The light turned green. I pressed my foot to the pedal and drove, not away from something, but toward the life we both deserved. Bottom of form.